All right, welcome everybody to talk number 3. Sorry, the HiFi Summit. I was going to say daily HiFi. HiFi Summit Day 2 in full effect. We are here with McIntosh, and we've got Ken and Joshua, and of course we got the daily HiFi crew here as well. How's everybody doing today?
Hey,
doing very good. Thanks for having us, guys. We appreciate it.
Hey, we appreciate you being on the show.
Yeah,
very totally.
So what are we talking about today, guys?
We're going to talk about McIntosh's approach to digital sound. I'm going to go over some very basic parts of how digital works, because I'm not sure it gets explained too much anymore. And then we're going to talk about how McIntosh applies that to the products that we make.
Cool. Ken, why don't you introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm Ken Zelin. I'm Director of Training for McIntosh Lab. I joined the company fairly recently. I started with them in 1972. They've got people there who've worked there longer than me, though. And all my life I've been involved with McIntosh components. It's the only job I've ever had. So I studied a little engineering, but I'm not an engineer. So I'm going to try to give everyone explanations today that they will understand. And we're going to use no math. I'm happy to announce.
Right. There you go.
All right. And while I'm going through this with you, can you guys send me some samples like the one that
Exactly.
Joshua has in the background so I can kind of go through the process with you?
Yeah.
Send you the address later.
It is a tube DAC. Yeah. Good eye. Go ahead, Ken.
I would have been in front of my McIntosh, but that would be the living room. The dog would undoubtedly start barking.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's hear it.
That's
I'm
rock and
interested.
roll.
I'm curious.
Okay, so let's start in. And we're going to just go over a couple of digital basics. So I want to start out with this. This is the type of wave that all music is made up of. It's called a sine wave or a sinusoidal wave, and it starts at 0 and goes up and then down, and goes up and down again. And all sound is made up of those waves. So the width between the humps of the wave is the frequency or the pitch. So bass notes have very long waves. Treble notes have short waves. The height of the wave is how loud the music is, the volume level of the wave. So here's what waves may look like. And you'd say, well, Ken, that doesn't look like a sine wave, but it actually is made up of a whole bunch of sine waves of different heights and different widths and starting and stopping at different times. So all music is made up fundamentally of sine waves, but it can look like this. And you'll see why I'm going through this in a bit. Now, unfortunately, this is analog music, and analog music, as much as you may love it, can get noise in. Noise can contaminate regular analog music, which is why the industry loved digital sound. Digital sound is almost immune to this problem, and we'll see why in a bit. Now, when you have noise, you lose detail of music. Because if you said to me, Ken, what is detail? Detail is small somethings on the background of nothingness. And here, the background never goes to nothing. So digital is ones and zeros. We don't have to deal with ones and zeros. We can just deal with numbers. It's a bunch of numbers to describe the sound. And if you want to know why digital is resistant to noise, it's simple. The computer chip that reads the music back and turns it from digital to analog is only programmed to read ones and zeros. So if noise gets in there, it just ignores it. It only knows a very simple language, ones and zeros. So digital is nice because you can send it over a wire, you can do anything you want with it, and as long as the ones and zeros don't get corrupted, the music stays whole. So here's a bold statement I'm going to make. If you know the height of the wave at every point in time, you know everything there is to know about the sound. The most complicated orchestra could be playing with 200 instruments, and if you look at the total sound wave as it hits your ears, as long as you know the height of the wave at every moment in time, precisely, you know everything there is about the sound and you can reproduce it. So what I did here was, this is digital in its most simple form. So I took that wave and I've got a clock ticking. Those vertical lines are the times that a little clock is ticking in the background. And every time the clock ticks, we plot the height of the wave. Notice I've got 1, 2, 3, and I've got -1, -2, -3. So if you look at this, the clock ticks, we look at the height of the wave, it's 0. The next time the clock ticks, the wave is at 3. Next time the clock ticks, the wave is at 0. Then it's at -3. Well, that will work, and you can turn that into ones and zeros and back into music, but it's going to look like this, and that's not going to sound very good. So that would be the world's worst digital system. Well, we can make it better. What we can do is we can have the clock tick twice as often. So every shorter period of time, the clock ticks. When the clock ticks, we plot the height of the wave. So now you see we've got 0, 1.8, 3, 1.8, 0, -1.8, -3. We've got more detail there. It's not just zeros and threes. And if we try to reconstruct the wave, it looks like that. And that still doesn't look too good, but it looks closer than the first one did. Well, we can get even better reproduction if the clock ticks more often and if we have more horizontal lines. So we're kind of like a TV. You know, you always want more lines of resolution. The more lines of resolution, the smoother the picture looks. It's the same thing here. More vertical lines and more horizontal lines means more detail of what the height of the wave is at every point in time and better reproduction. So everyone's probably heard of sampling rate, and not many people seem to know what it is. It's simply how often we clock the wave height. That's it. It's how closely packed the vertical lines are. So if the vertical lines are really tightly packed and we're plotting the height of the wave very, very often, that's a high sampling rate. Well, when we plot the height of the wave, how much detail do we plot it at 1, 1.8, 1.83, 1.835? The number of horizontal lines, how precisely we write down the height of the wave, that's the bit rate. So the sampling rate is how closely packed the vertical lines are. The bit rate is how closely packed the horizontal lines are. And the higher the bit rate and the higher the sampling rate, the more pure the digital reproduction is, and the closest we get to the original wave, this is what we want to achieve. And if you have 16 bits and the clock ticks 44.1 thousand times a second, I have an extra 0 there, sorry about that, you can create a virtually perfect wave. This is what we were told originally, and it actually is true. But it's only true if everything is perfect. So here we've got my grandmother with cataracts in a car driving down a narrow lane, and in theory everything should be fine, but it's really not going to go too well for too long. If she makes any mistake at all, she's going to be in another lane, and that's going to be a problem. So although we've always been told that 16 bits and 44.1 kilohertz is enough for great sound, it's a narrow lane, and if you do anything wrong, you can run into distortion. So we've all heard of high resolution audio, and that's when you have more bits and a higher sampling rate. And what that does is it creates a wider lane on the highway. So every engineer along the way can mess up just a little bit, and you could have a little loss of signal. And if you've got more bits and a higher sampling rate, you've just plain got a higher lane that you're traveling in, and there's a greater chance that all the music will be preserved. Well, does this give us perfect sound? So here's our hearing range. It goes from 20 to 20,000 hertz. And this CD player, for instance, has a pretty flat line and everything seems good, but we've got one problem with digital sound, and this is probably the biggest problem with digital sound. If you remember, that clock is ticking 44,100 times every second. So with digital sound, in the background is this horrendous clock noise. You can actually, your speakers would be able to hear this clock noise, and your tweeters in your speakers would go absolutely nuts. So with digital sound, you've got to filter out this high frequency that you can't hear, but your amplifier won't like it, and your speakers are going to hate it. And that's the biggest challenge in digital audio. What we need to do is let all the music go up to 20,000, and then we need a filter that cuts everything off above 20,000, so we completely suppress 44,000 hertz. And that's very hard to do, because 20,000 and 44,000, that's about an octave apart. So that's really hard to do. And filters are really not very good for sound. They actually cause phase shift, and that's time delay, so that certain frequencies get delayed from other frequencies. And if you spent good money on great speakers where the tweeter's placed perfectly, and the filter in your digital device messes up the timing of your sound, that's really bad. So if we could design the perfect filter, it would let all the music through up to 20,000. It would allow nothing through above 20,000. It would have zero distortion. It would increase the noise not in the least, and it wouldn't shift the music in time. That's what the perfect filter would do. We don't have that. Doesn't exist. So the bad news is that the sharper the filter, the worse it is for sound, because it shifts this phase, this timing, even more. The more gradual the filter, the better it is for sound, but the worse it is at blocking the noise. So we have a two-part fix, and almost everyone uses this. We move the noise up in frequency. So what we're going to do is we're going to make the clock work at a much higher frequency. See how that red line is moved way off to the right? What we've done is we've made the clock in our digital device work at 4, 8, 16 times the speed it needs to. Now, you might say, oh, we're going to get 16 times as much music out. No, that's not going to happen. If the music was put on with a normal sampling rate, every time you look at it and the clock ticks, if it ticks 4 times as often, you're going to get 4 of the same readings. It's kind of like if your local radio station updates the weather once an hour and you decide you're going to call them up and ask what the weather is every minute. That's not going to help. You're not going to be any more precise. You're going to keep getting 60 of the same reports in a row. But what we're doing here electronically is if we allow the clock to work at a much higher frequency, the clock noise is separated from the music by a much greater distance, and we can use a much more gradual filter. And gradual filters do not mess up the sound basically almost at all. So that is called oversampling. Almost everyone's heard the term oversampling, and I don't know why it's usually not explained very well. So that's pretty simple. Oversampling is something we use, most companies use it, and it allows us to put in a very gradual filter. Now, the DACs we use in our preamps and integrated amps, I want to talk about this just a little bit because digital circuits produce noise. I hate to say it, but they do. So do power supplies. So this is the back of a McIntosh preamp, and if you look at it carefully, it almost looks like 2 chassis that have been bolted together. And that's exactly what it is. So what McIntosh is doing in their units is the digital circuits and the power supply are all in the bottom chassis, and the top chassis is pure analog. So the phono section is in there, all the analog music, and there's actually a metal girder going right down the middle of this, and that keeps the noise away from the analog signals because they're kind of delicate. Now, on our newest units, we've done something else. No matter how good our digital circuits are, in about 2 years, they're going to be not state-of-the-art anymore. So digital involves computers, and we all know how fast computers are improving. So what we've done now is we've put really good digital circuits in our preamps and our integrated amps. We use 32-bit. Remember, CD players were 16-bit, and the sampling rate is 192 kilohertz. Remember, CDs were 44,000, so we're using that oversampling. So we've got really good DACs, but now they're removable. So in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, when they're no longer considered state-of-the-art, you don't have to buy a separate DAC or trade in your unit. You're just going to unplug the DAC and you're going to plug in the new, better one. And that's kind of a neat feature we just started doing, because Mac products last a long time, and we want our customers to be able to keep our preamps for a long time. In fact, this preamp has a DA1 module. We just came out with a DA2, which has a couple of neat features in it, and customers can upgrade. So that's kind of a nice thing. And here's our 2 modules that we put in everything. The DA1 is on the left has got a pair of optical inputs and a pair of coax inputs and a special input that if we have time I'll talk about, and a USB input for your computer. And we've updated the module. The new DA2 also has an HDMI input because so many of our customers, even with 2-channel systems, they want to take sound out of their TV. And the best way to do that is HDMI because it gives you the best sound quality. So that's in our newest products. I want to talk about CD players a little bit. I'm going to get out of this screen for just a moment and see if we have any questions that have come up. Josh, do I have any questions yet?
Yeah, there was actually one that was pretty interesting. Well, the MX170 processor, even though this isn't specific to digital, but it is digital codecs, will the MX170 processor support IMAX Enhanced or DTS:X Pro?
We are constantly updating that piece, and I would have to find out. So I would say let's put that in an email and we can get back to them on that. The MX170 is an interesting product because it's really just a giant computer that can update itself over your network, and we're constantly adding more features to it. I just found out that pretty soon we have a pretty massive update. So I know we're going to add some things, and this may be on the list. The 170 decodes so many different formats. I'm having trouble keeping track at age 62 of everything it does. So we can get back to them with that, but that's a very answerable question. Excellent. Any others I should address at the moment?
The other thing that came up I thought was interesting is somebody mentioned about shielding.
Yes.
With the digital within the preamps to protect the analog. So if you could touch on that very quickly.
Sure. Well, analog signals, remember, can pick up noise. And no matter how fast the clock ticks, we've got a clock ticking on the digital circuits. And that high frequency can mix in, especially on the phono section. So phono inputs, those who are not interested in vinyl, this is less of a factor. But I can see, Josh, you've got quite a nice turntable behind you. Turntables put out about 1/100th the signal strength of all other analog sources. There's a lot of amplification going on. And if that amplification is close to the power supply or digital circuits, you can get background noise. In fact, on one of our units, one of our integrated amps, we had two jacks, one on top of another, and we simply couldn't get rid of that last bit of noise, and we had to change it and take the two jacks and put them horizontally so they could be right against the circuit board. And by shortening the connectors that 1/4 of an inch, it got rid of the noise. So this is how much we pay attention to these things. So the most high-end preamps in the world, including ours, are often in two chassis. And one chassis contains the amplification and the other chassis contains the power supply. And that's what we're really doing. It's literally two separate chassis, but they're bolted to the same faceplate in the case of this, because we didn't want it to be a $10,000 preamp. Okay.
That's great information. Yeah, that's awesome. So we're about 20 minutes in, Ken. So if you have more that you'd like to speak about specific to our approach to digital sound or any of the other products and how we implement that, I think we should go ahead and move forward there. And then we'll have some more time to answer some more questions. And there was one last question that was actually, I think, referenced me. Yeah, those are Sonus Faber that are behind me. Those are the Olympica 3s.
Beautiful.
But, yeah. But go ahead, Ken. Let's start back up.
Okay. So let's talk about CD players. You know, we've become a CD player specialist. And it's funny that some consumers and some dealers will say, why do we have so many CD players? More and more people are streaming their music. And the reason is there's tens of thousands or millions of people out there with thousands of CDs, and they still like to hold something in their hand. Vinyl enthusiasts know what it's like to hold a record. Well, CD enthusiasts, they don't get to hold as much, but they still get to hold it. So most of our competitors in the market have stopped making CD players. They just don't sell enough to be worth it. For us, it's worth it because we build our own transports and we stuff our own circuit boards. We can make money on CD players, to put it simply. So we have a very large variety of CD players, and they're very important to us, and we intend to stick with it till that last person gets rid of his last CD player. So I want to talk about the digital to analog conversion in CD players, because we do something that nobody else does. And it's pretty simple to understand, but I'm going to go back to the beginning. This is what it looked like inside of an early CD player. If we go back to 1983, I think it was. The digital stream comes in, and believe it or not, they used one DAC for both channels. It would switch back and forth between the left and right channels, back and forth and back and forth. And it worked pretty well, but you can see those two waves on the right side are out of sync with each other a little bit. That's what would happen, because it's going back and forth and alternating between channels. This was how companies did it when DACs were expensive and in short supply. So if you bought a cheap CD player, it had one DAC. Nobody does that anymore. Okay, so this is how most companies do it. There's a data stream that gets put into a left DAC and a right channel DAC. And what that does is it puts the music back in sync between the two channels. And this is really all you need to do. This is how most CD players are built, but we don't do that. This is what we started doing a while ago. Now, balanced cables are something I always talk about. I try to get everyone to use balanced cables for analog music, because balanced cables cannot pick up noise. I mean, you can run 100 yards of a balanced cable and you're just not going to pick up noise. What happens is, in a balanced cable, which has 3 pins at the end, one has music and one is ground, and the third pin is what I call anti-music. It's music flipped upside down before it enters the cable. And then the cable picks up noise. All cables do pick up noise. But when we get to the other end of the cable, we flip everything on the second wire upside down. The anti-music turns back into music and we get louder music. But the noise picked up along the cable is canceled. It is just gone. Well, we can apply this same technology all over the place. We apply it to amps. Most people have, if you travel a lot, you probably have noise canceling headphones. They work exactly the same way. Some of the jet engine noise hits your eardrum, but some of the jet engine noise is picked up by a microphone on the headphone. It's flipped upside down, so it's anti-jet engine noise and fed to your eardrum, and the two cancel. Well, DACs produce a little noise, we know that. They also have imperfections in their sound. Everything does. Well, we use 2 per channel, and we feed music into one, upside down music into the other. It comes out, we invert what comes out of the second one again, and the noise and the imperfections of the DAC's job turning analog into digital, most of the imperfections get canceled. Now, we're not the only company that does this, but this is a great way to do it. And what this means is, on our CD players, or streaming devices, they will actually sound better if you use the balanced output, because you're taking full advantage of this circuit. So this is what you'll find in very high-end players. But this is what we're doing now. We've done it 1 step better. Well, I just lied. We're doing it 4 steps better. So what we actually have is, when we put a DAC in our preamp, or a DAC in our streamer, or a DAC in most of our CD players, there's actually 8 DACs. And this isn't for multi-channel. This is just for stereo. So we have, if you take DACs are doing mathematical calculations all the time. They're turning ones and zeros into music, and they can make little errors. If you put 2 of them together, you get a smaller error. So for instance, if Josh gave me a list of 100 numbers to add up in 5 minutes, I could come up with what all the numbers add up to, but I'll bet I'm making a mistake because I'm not that good at working fast. But if he gave me the list of numbers to add and gave someone else the same list of numbers to add up, and we averaged the answers between the two results, the amount of error would be halved. So that's what we do. We always use, whenever we can, twice as many DACs as we need to. And that does 3 things. It lowers the noise, it lowers the errors, and it also lowers the output impedance, which is just a good nifty technical thing. So we actually have a left channel music and another left channel music DAC, and 2 left channel anti-music DACs, and same thing for the right channel. If you can go overboard, that's a McIntosh tradition. Just do it one time better. Now, as crazy as this sounds, I don't think many people should be buying CD players anymore, even if their CD player breaks. And the reason is a CD player consists of 2 parts. There's a mechanical part that hopefully floats up and down so vibration won't interfere. And there's a laser that reads the 1s and 0s on the disc. And there's a motor that's always correcting in speed because CD players need to change the speed of the motor constantly, but it needs to be accurate. And that's called the transport part of the CD player. The other half of a CD player is a DAC. Well, great CD players are very costly because they have great transports and great DACs in them. But most people today already, if they're buying a Mac CD player or many others, they likely already have a DAC in their preamp or integrated amp. So buying a CD player with a DAC and plugging it into a preamp or amp with a DAC is just silly. It's a waste of their money. So we also produce transports. And what this is, it's a super high-end CD player, but only the mechanical part. So you're not paying for the DAC. So it's still not inexpensive, but you can buy fantastic for the price of really, really good. And this is what most customers should be buying. If we take a peek at the back of it, it's got an optical output and a coax output, and it even has an XLR balanced digital output in case you have a balanced DAC, which is really kind of cool. Another thing we do is we're not abandoning SACD. SACD, Super Audio CD, never made it that big in the US, but it's still gigantic in Asia. And I know quite a few people who have a big collection of SACDs. And the problem is a lot of new CD players don't play them. All of ours do. And you can't build a transport that can output SACD music on the digital out. So normally anyone who has a collection of SACDs can't buy a transport because it's not allowed to output it. I think Sony was afraid you'd make perfect copies of your SACDs. But what we did get permission to do is put this jack on the back. And it's a funny little multi-pin jack. And if we go back just for a moment and we look at the back of our preamps, here we go. See that MCT jack? That's an equivalent funny looking jack. And you buy our transport and you buy our preamps or integrated amps. And this transport comes with this interesting little cable, and the SACD decoding is done perfectly in balanced form inside the preamp. And this was a way we got Sony to be happy and allow us to get the license and let people save money by buying transports instead of having to buy entire CD players. So a fundamental thing about McIntosh is we may be about the only company around that isn't abandoning SACD owners. So just to basically summarize, the McIntosh approach to digital is keep the digital and analog far away from each other, shield the two, have an upgrade path whenever possible so you don't have to trade in your unit. You can come in and just get a new module when technology changes. Use balanced circuits whenever possible. We use quad balancing, the ultimate version, because balanced circuits cancel noise and distortion. Offer transports whenever possible so people don't have to buy a whole CD player. And don't forget about SACD levers because McIntosh has a bunch of those. And I want to thank everyone for their time, and I'm happy to take any questions that there might be.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of questions in here.
I'll try my best. I'm not an engineer, but I do speak a little.
No, that was a great presentation. I think everybody understood everything you were talking about. Yeah, fantastic.
Sure, that's the idea.
Yeah, a lot of really positive comments about the educational side of things. So we really appreciate you going into that and breaking that down. There was one question in reference to the MCT, since we just kind of got off that topic. Somebody asked the question of how many pins are on that MCT connector.
You know, that's an excellent question. It may be 8 because I know it's sending things balanced line. Let's see if I can take a look at that. Let me go back.
Now, while you're searching for that, Ken, is the MCT connector, is that proprietary to McIntosh DACs?
Yes, it had to be to make Sony happy. They don't
just want to make sure that everyone understood that.
Yep, because we're paying the rights for SACD when we sell a preamp. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, it looks like 8 pins in an asymmetrical layout. So I think that's the answer.
Very cool. Another question just came in. For a transport to a C2700, do you use balanced or one of the digital inputs?
Oh, for the, yes. So neither. So with transport, you're not going to use the balanced outs because they're analog. You could hook it up with optical or coax, but the transport comes with a special cable, plugs into that special jack on the 2700, and allows you to play CDs and SACDs and MP3 and anything else you want, sends the signal down the line digitally but balanced, so it's the best of all possible scenarios, and you don't use up any of your digital inputs. And it's free. It's in the box.
It's free. That's
that's the best. That's the best part. And then
isn't that
nice?
McIntosh just giving away free stuff. That's what I love to hear.
That cable doesn't look that fancy, but it took our digital engineer 3 months to find a company that could make a cable with the exact electrical characteristics we want. So people will look at it and go, doesn't look fancy, you know, the part you grasp isn't made out of the Afromosia wood, but you know, it's a great cable.
Right.
Awesome.
Do these transports also support DSD? That was one of the questions I just saw.
Yeah, that just came in.
So that's a good question. We can do DSD on our USB connector, which is on the preamp, because that's usually computer audio. I don't know of any discs that are recorded in DSD.
Right, because
So
the digital, the direct stream digital or something like that, I think it is.
Yeah,
it's
direct stream digital.
It's from SACD, right? They took that and made it into
Yeah,
like, a
essentially,
digital-
essentially an SACD is more or less a form of DSD. And then when DSD came out, that was more specific to the digital files itself. And those can be encoded and those can be decoded over USB audio on our DACs. Most of our
now
DACs.
DACs do accept it.
Very
Yeah,
good.
that's correct.
I got a random question. I heard long time ago that if you're going off a CD player, that coaxial output is better than optical. Any truth to that, or?
Oh my goodness. Oh well, you know.
Uh-oh. Did I just
British? I'm
Then
gonna
the
get
It's
landmine?
grumbling instantly.
I'm gonna get myself in trouble in the UK.
Uh-oh.
I think the Brits started that rumor. They're convinced it's true. Now they also don't like the displays on CD players. They usually complain that they interfere with the sound and they want to have a button to turn off the display. I'm not sure I'm buying into that myself. I like using the optical personally because coax cable it's electrical and you can get ground loops. A lot of people have run into this. They buy a subwoofer or they get a new cable box and all of a sudden they've got hum in their system. Well, optical keeps the grounds floating from each other. So I like optical because it can avoid ground loops.
Okay,
if
that
you're
makes
British,
sense. Yeah.
you probably like coax, and whichever one you use, you know what I say? Plug it in both ways and see how you like it. We
Which
put
one sounds
some
better?
inputs and outs on ours, and you can use them all at the same time.
There you go. Got a couple of the great questions that came in. Adam's got
Okay.
one here regarding ultrasonic noise. If a speaker doesn't have a frequency response much higher than 20 kilohertz, is it really an issue?
Yes. So when they build a tweeter, every tweeter resonates at a certain frequency. You know, the resonation is where it kind of goes nuts. And, you know, the old
Right.
or wherever it was used to sing the note and break the glass in the commercials from Memorex tape. So everything resonates at a certain frequency. When it resonates, there's a big peak in the frequency response. So what everyone's trying to do is build tweeters that are so light that the resonance is above 20,000, so it doesn't interfere with the music. Well, if it aligns at all close with the digital noise, that can really be a problem. Your tweeter's kind of going crazy, even though you can't see it.
Gotcha.
But the other thing is that it's the filter that really messes up the sound. So you have to get rid of the noise for certain speakers. So if you pull it up to a high frequency, no one's ever argued that that's a bad thing to do, and it kind of satisfies everyone and all speaker requirements. So why not?
Sure. Makes sense.
Awesome. Yeah, there's this question here that I really wanted to touch on. So thank you for highlighting it. So what's your perspective on sound after the DAC is passing through a tube preamplifier? Does that affect the sound in any negative or positive way? Are tube preamps better for analog sources?
Well, I love
thinking?
the sound of tube preamps. I have to say, the first high-end system I ever heard was all McIntosh playing Doobie Brothers at a volume level of about 11 out of 10. And I like my music loud. So I can't have a tube amp because, well, I guess I could, but it would cost a fortune to get enough power for me using tubes. But once you've got a tube preamp, you've got that tubeliciousness to the sound. Whether it's in the preamp
Tubelicious.
or
Love it. Love it.
Coined it.
That's my patent term.
Trademark.
You can't have that.
Macintosh Tubelicious. I love it. That should be your next product line.
Yeah.
At least a t-shirt idea.
Yes,
you
for
go.
sure. For sure.
Marketing. I love it.
So now having most tubes produce a fair amount of noise. And you could argue, and this is legit, that if you're listening to high-res streamed music through a tube preamp, you're not getting all the dynamic range of the music because the tube's noise floor is too high.
Gotcha.
With analog sources, we don't never have that problem. So everyone loves tubes with analog sources. Not to try to, toot McIntosh's horn more than I'm already doing it today. But our tube preamp, if you put it to any high level input, like the CD input, and you turn the volume up to 95, which you'll never do in normal use, there's really no noise.
Nice.
We've basically eliminated noise from our tube preamps. And so it's really, I say go for it. Use tubes for everything, in my opinion, and that's just perfectly fine. If you want to argue that technically you lose a little resolution, I'm willing to do that for the tubeliciousness.
There you go.
I'm with you, Ken. I like that hybrid approach. Tube preamp and solid state power.
That's literally what's going on behind me. So
there we go. That is the answer.
Yep.
That's and our two new super popular integrated amps we just came out with, one of which is arguably underpriced. It's a tube preamp with a solid state amp on one chassis. That's just the hot ticket. And if you can afford to do it all tubes, that's great. It's just that I need 300 watts per channel, and that gets expensive with tubes.
Yeah. Ken, what was the model number on that that hybrid that you were talking about? Chana, you want to pull that up?
Yep, the MA252, and now it's got a big brother, the MA352.
Because I'll be honest, those look gorgeous.
It is one sexy beast.
It is. There's no doubt. It's got the green tubes
and then
on top.
We took it one step further with our new reference single channel amplifier that basically has a 300 watt tube amplifier and a 600 watt solid state amplifier. So it's a mono amp.
Look at that.
But you can basically bi-amp your speaker with the 300 watts on the tube on the tweeter in the mid range, and then you can have the 600 watt solid state on your lower frequency woofers. So we took that same kind of ideology and then applied it to a single chassis amplifier.
Yep.
I feel like I have to upgrade my life to be able to use that. I need to upgrade my home and everything to match that.
You're also going to have to work on your fitness because it weighs 180 pounds per chassis.
If you will send it to me, I will gladly.
So if you can, you do the deadlifts with it, you'll be in good shape by the end of quarantine.
Oh, there you go.
I will gladly take that on.
Only about 35 though. This is only about 35 pounds. The one shown on the screen right now.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, this guy is awesome.
Yep,
it looks gorgeous, man.
In it though, everyone needs to know that.
Right.
It's analog only, and it's moving magnet on the phono stage.
That's its big brother.
Yeah. So that one has the meters. It has more inputs.
We went way overboard on this.
That just looks so awesome.
Yep, it's rated for 200 into 8 ohms.
Nice.
320 watts into 4 ohms. One magazine just tested it. It was over 500 watts continuous into 4 ohms.
4 ohms, 500 watt continuous? Wow.
We typically underrate our power ratings. We're very conservative.
Yep, always.
All the best companies do.
But yeah, somebody has commented the MC901. That's the exact amplifier that we're talking about. The MC901 is our latest reference single channel amplifier. MC901.
And that everyone's always, well, not everyone. Many people have dreamed. Hey, Will. Many people have dreamed over the years about tubes for the highs and solid state for the lows. And whenever they try to do it, it doesn't seem to work. Because you need a crossover, and this has got everything built in.
That's rad. Oh my god!
This you could do an entire hour show on.
Look at that thing.
You can just get a bunch of those, Michael.
Maybe that's for a podcast, Ken.
For your home theater, huh?
Yeah.
Just one for all the channels.
Cool.
We could do that.
Dual mono. Look at this guy.
Wow.
So there's the electronic crossover and the trim controls on the top.
Yeah.
If you go back one.
Go
back one, then you'll see, you see the trim control. So it has the electronic crossover that's built directly in. So basically it's seamless between the tube and the solid state.
Yep. And the electronic crossover does not fight the crossover in your speaker. It stays away from that, but tube amps can't be unloaded at low frequencies. So we had to get the deep bass out of the high frequency amp and vice versa. It's just a very special product. They even did a few things I asked for on it. So I had a little bit of input on that.
Yeah. I don't need to go too crazy. Just send me over one of the 352s to review.
Yeah, the little hybrids, man.
Okay.
My Martin Logans will love it.
Wow,
Yes.
anyone else drooling?
Yeah.
Don't want to get kicked off for X-rated content here on YouTube.
Yeah,
right,
right.
exactly.
Too much porn here on
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was about to say, is there a thing like McIntosh porn?
Yep.
All right. Well,
Someone
I
said
think
the analog section is where you get noise anyway. You get audible noise from analog, and you get super high frequency noise you can't hear with digital, and it messes up other things. So correct.
So here's a great question that came in from Randall. Any truth on the rumor that McIntosh is adding one of those to the giveaway section on the HiFi Summit? They're not laughing, guys. Let them know.
They're wishful thinking.
Adding what to the Hi-Fi Summit?
Maybe
any of
the-
your products to
Any of the
giveaway
products on the
section.
giveaway.
Yeah.
Maybe in Q3.
Oh,
Unfortunately, not during this summit.
yeah,
Let's
answer
make
your
it happen,
question.
Joshua. Q3.
There you go.
4 to 3.
It's above our pay grade to make that decision. Look,
How
I've
about
only been with Max since 72. It has to be someone with more seniority.
Wow.
You've been great, Ken. I enjoyed this whole seminar. So I
Cool.
appreciate
It's
you.
been fun,
It's
man.
fun.
Seriously.
Thanks,
I
guys.
love it. I'm happy to do it again sometime.
Fun. As long as you had fun, then we did our job. And I think the people in the comments, I think they had a great time as well.
Absolutely.
Oh,
And
they
so-
definitely
Yeah, we
did.
appreciate the engagement for sure.
And if I do get Macintosh gear, does that automatically make me like on point like you? Because you're so on point. Josh was kept everything in check, organized. So thank you for
Yeah.
keeping everything on point. I just need to get some of that gear.
Okay. We can arrange that.
Yeah, no, definitely. So Ken and Joshua, thank you guys.
You guys
so
have been
much.
great.
guys.
Appreciate it.
Thank
We're
you.
happy to be here.
We're happy to have you here at the HiFi Summit Day 2. And we have another talk coming up in about 8 minutes from MoFi Distribution. So all of you guys here for the HiFi Summit, don't forget to go into the lobby discussion, and you can click on that group video chat. If you guys want to see some Macintosh with those Polk L800s, MPTOGO has a video shot of that going on right now.
Yep.
And it's pretty awesome sight to see those blue meters with that Polk Legend SDA. So we'll see you guys in just a few minutes.
Thanks.
Yep.
Appreciate
Bye-bye,
it, guys.
everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you guys so much.
Stay healthy.
Bye.
Bye.